All right, so the first section is 1, which is understanding exponents. So remember, an exponent is that number times itself, however many it says. So that base is the number that you're going to multiply by itself. Exponent is going to tell me how many times you do that. Okay, so if you look here, like on the first one, your base is going to be that 7, and there's 1, 2, 3, 4 of them. So 7 to the 4th. So that's 7 times 7 times 7 times 7. If I rewrite that as an exponent, that's 7 to the 4th. This one should not take very long. The only thing I do want to point out is anything to the 0 power is 1. Okay, and a simple way to explain that is if like I have 5 squared, which is 5 times 5, which would be 25. 5 to the first would just be one of them, so just 5. And then if I go 5 to the 0, so what's happening here? You're dividing by 5 because it's how many times 5 is written. So you do it again here. If I divide 5 by 5, you get 1. Okay, so that's how that works. That's how it makes sense. So 1 should be very quick and easy to do. Okay, and then it goes on to the back side and it just says use a calculator. Okay. So go ahead and use a calculator. When it's written in parentheses, that matters. So that's saying a -8 times a -8 times a -8. Okay, so negative times a negative, positive times another negative is a negative. So that's going to affect your signs. Okay, express them as a base with an exponent. So it's like backwards of what you just did. So how could you get to 9? What times itself is 9? So you could do 3 to the 2nd power. There's a couple of these that have more than one answer, but just one answer is acceptable on each. Now, how we're going to do this is you're going to do them until you feel comfortable, and then I will assign something else. Remember, so we talked about that. So you don't have to cover all of it. If you feel comfortable, then I will assign something that goes with it. 1, 2 is a little bit harder. So if you're multiplying with your exponents, what you do is you add your exponents. Now, if you have an exponent raised to an exponent, that's when it gets a little trickier. Okay, so if I have, another good way to put it, so if I have a cubed times a to the 2nd. Okay. Okay, if I'm multiplying, I add my exponents. So I'd have a to the 5th. And the reason this makes sense is because a to the 3rd would be a times a times a. A to the 2nd would be a times a. Well, how many did I have? I had 5 of them. Okay, same concept goes when you have it raised to an exponent. So let's say I had a to the 4th all raised to the 2nd power. Well, what you do here is you're going to have this just means that this is happening twice. So you'd have an a to the 4th times a to the 4th. Well, if I add those exponents, that's a to the 8th. So if you want to do a shortcut to that, is if you have an exponent raised to an exponent, you multiply. Okay, so that's what's going on here. So simplify each expression below. So you're going to have to multiply. So this one, an exponent to an exponent, so I multiply. So I'd have 5 to the 6th. And then I would throw that in my calculator and work that out. Okay, gets a little more difficult and you're probably like, why is this written funny? Well, 4 times 5, do that first, do the 20, because you always do with stuff in parentheses first, order of operations. Then you have 20 squared, so 20 times 20, you're going to get 400. Okay, what I want to point out is when you get over here and you're raising it to that power. Now you could rewrite it. You could, but that would be a lot of work. This is 2b to the 3rd times 2b to the 3rd times 2b to the 3rd times 2b to the 3rd, right? Because it's the 4th power, so it's doing it 4 times. Well, if you look here, 2 times 2 times 2 times 2 is actually 16. And how many b's do I have? 3, 6, 9, 3, 6, 9, 10, 11, 12. So b to the 12. The other way to shortcut it is you have to remember that this 2 has an exponent of 1. So 1 times 4, I'd have 2 to the 4th, which is ends up being 16. And then multiply there, so you have b to the 12. If you work it out, you still get the same answer. To me, it's a lot harder to write these out because eventually you're going to get to the point where those exponents are really high and you're not going to want to write them out over and over and over again. So that takes care of 1-1 and 1-2. If you get that much done, then we'll worry about some more. So 1-1 and 1-2, and I will also assign a quiz that goes with these two.